Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech, the only channel on YouTube that focuses on Star Wars. It's hosted by a guy named Alan, who has legs. So first of all, my review for Ahsoka Episode 4 is up, and to summarize, I basically say, wow! And in this video, let's talk about what honestly is one of the best duels I've seen in a long time from Star Wars, and it's the duel that just happened in Ahsoka between Baylan's skull and Ahsoka Tano. It's not the fanciest duel, it's not the most acrobatic, this ain't your Duel of Fates from Episode 3. This duel also doesn't have the same amount of baggage like Kenobi Vader Part 2, with the whole, I'm gonna get revenge from Kenobi for making me into a cripple vibe. But what does happen in this fight, it's done really well. So they say you could learn a lot about an individual by having a good old-fashioned fight to the death with them. This is why I'm so well versed with dolphins and I really understand how they think. In these situations, there's really no holding back, no keeping up your guard or adhering to social norms. When you're fighting to the death, you go all out and essentially become your true self. You know that version of yourself that you're always trying to shape and change and tidy up for other people? Actually, you know who doesn't do that? Crackheads. Crackheads don't do that. In a way, they're freer than us. Freer. And lightsaber dueling, that just takes it to the next level. A lot of people think of this type of fighting as being very similar to sword fighting. There are some similarities, but the reality is there's no solid sword here. There's no weight in these strikes. What's actually happening is these force-sensitive individuals are channeling pure columns of energy.
Energy constantly flows through the crystal. You're not fighting with a simple blade as much as you are directing a current of power. Your thoughts, your actions, they become energy. They flow through the crystal as well and become a part of the blade.
And so in a stunningly beautiful and dangerous way, this is not just an exchange of lightsabers we're seeing here, this is an exchange of emotions, ideas, and thoughts. This is a conversation, a heated conversation. And this is why for the longest time Sith Lords like Darth Sidious have tried to corrupt and instill fear into the minds of his enemies. I mean, listen to the noise he makes right before he confronts these 4 Jedi Masters. Some of these guys sit on the council. These are all really high-ranking and experienced fighters. So why does Mace Windu survive the longest and eventually succeed in taking down Palpatine? Well, it is because of his lightsaber form and technique. He's very well practiced. But Mace Windu is trained in far more than just what are the basic strikes for each form or how you should hold your lightsaber. That's kind of the stage where Sabine Wren is, and she's hardly even mastered that. No, instead Mace Windu is deeply connected to his blade through the Force. He falls into the rhythm of the Force during his duels and allows the Force to begin guiding his action. And it gives him a better understanding of where Darth Sidious's presence and blade is. And more importantly, he uses Form 7, Vapad. It's a technique that he developed himself, and what's really cool about this form is it allows Mace Windu to literally absorb dark side energy, channel it, and redirect it right back at his enemy in the form of power strikes. It's kind of the perfect form for a Jedi who has to hunt down Sith. Of course, channeling dark side energy inside of your body can be dangerous. Now, Mace Windu says it doesn't affect him, but he never really allows anyone else to use his form. The stronger Palpatine's strikes are, the stronger Mace Windu will reflect them back at him. So the point is, there's a lot more going on in these duels than just form and technique and physicality. There's a duel going on in the minds of the participants and also in the Force. And as we've mentioned in our Ahsoka dueling style breakdown, good old Snips has learned from some of the best, so this duel between her and Baylan's skull should be epic. But it's not exactly what I expected. Actually, Ahsoka doesn't act like herself at all here. She kind of becomes imbalanced, which makes this extremely interesting. Like any good duel, it all starts with some verbal sparring. Now, people think of this kind of stuff as fluff or filler. A lot of people don't like that every Jedi battle starts out with a conversation. It might even seem a bit corny, and it might get into the way of fighting. But as I said, lightsaber combat is about the body, the mind, and the Force. If one of these things are imbalanced, the entire body is imbalanced. And Ahsoka Tano has learned how to, shit talk with some of the best in the galaxy, including Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was a cautious and defensive paladin, and he always used Form 3, which lacked teeth. And so his strategy was always to just tire out aggressive opponents, make them attack his prepared defenses until they started making mistakes. And sometimes he would goad his enemies with a few choice words.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
Obi-Wan Kenobi was Anakin's master. He knew that Anakin hated being told what to do, and what he says here is exactly the type of comment that would make Anakin make a stupid mistake. Now, Baylan Skoll we know much less about, but he clearly is cut from a similar cloth to individuals like Dooku and Pong Krell. He's strong and he's capable, that much is clear. He survived Order 66, but now that the Jedi are gone, their culture, their institutions, their regulations, it means Baylan Skoll can finally be his true self. And he decides to embrace what he really wants.
Power. Such as you've never dreamed.
Now, most people want power for the same reason. It's for control. It's so that they can make the world around them a little bit less scarier. Now, Baylan Skoll is not a weak individual. He was a Jedi. He's always been looked up to. But I do think that his experiences during Order 66 traumatized him and made him more worried about getting power so that he can control his surroundings and his own future. At the same time, he's clearly not some power-hungry, dark side Sith Force user, and that's what makes him incredibly dangerous. Look how he easily manipulates Sabine Wren into doing exactly what he wants. This takes skill.
You should do as your master says. Destroy it. I know you feel that Ezra Bridger is the only family you have left. Come with me. Willingly. I give you my word. No harm will come to you. Sabine, you will be reunited with your friend.
Yeah, he might seem a little disingenuous, and the show does frame him as the bad guy, but he does stop his apprentice from choking out Sabine Wren.
Shin, release her. Shin. I gave her my word, and unlike her former master, I shall keep mine.
Maybe Baylan Skoll wants minions. Maybe he wants people to help him out. Maybe he truly believes in his own righteous path in the same way that Count Dooku believed in what he was doing. I believe that it's actually a bit of everything. I think Baylan Skoll really doesn't want to fight Ahsoka Tano. I think he is interested in making the world a more stable place. And that kind of makes him weak. Because he hasn't embraced the dark side fully, he isn't able to use all of its powers. But at the same time, he has a really sharp mind, and he knows exactly how the Jedi think, which probably makes him even more dangerous. I wouldn't be surprised if, in another life, Baylan Skoll was a Jedi ambassador. Not just a normal Jedi, but a Jedi who made peace between various factions, who understood how to read people with the Force, and understood how to push people's buttons and get exactly what he wants. Notice how he doesn't even have to use a Force mind trick. Baylan Skoll is deadly competent. When he talks to Ahsoka Tano, he can't use the same tricks he uses against Sabine. Instead, he tries to shake her center and make her more emotional. As we all know, when a Jedi becomes distracted, more emotional, they lose their connection to the Force, which makes it harder for them to fight.
Anakin spoke highly of you.
Interesting. He never mentioned you.
Now, the fanboy inside of me wants to go, oh, but the Star Wars nerd inside of me understands that Ahsoka's taking the bait here. She's in his trap. As calm and relaxed as Ahsoka might seem in her old age, there's a reason why she used to be called Snips. Back in the day, she was more ego and emotion driven. And I don't think that side of her ever disappeared. It's just been suppressed a little bit. It's still in there, and her experiences, her relationship with Anakin is honestly a wound that never managed to heal. And so Baylan Skoll is just picking scabs here.
Everyone in the Order knew Anakin Skywalker. Few would live to see what he became.
Okay, now you can kind of see the evil side of Baylan Skoll. Look at the smugness on his face. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Surely that must leave a mark. Is that why you walked away? Abandoned him?
See, the interesting thing here is Baylan Skoll is on defense. He should be trying to buy time. But instead he's goading Ahsoka into attacking him, which doesn't really help him out that much. But then again, he might have sensed Ahsoka's aggression through the Force. He probably knew that Anakin was her master, so I'm guessing he also knew that his Padawan had a hot temperament as well. And that aggression makes her truly imbalanced, and Baylan Skoll starts pushing all of Ahsoka's little buttons, making her more and more flustered. Now, when the skirmish starts, Ahsoka does her own thing here. She goes immediately for her main blade, but only in a two-handed configuration. We've covered Ahsoka's dueling style extensively in previous videos, but the point is she's most at home using Ataru, a quick and acrobatic form of lightsaber combat that can overwhelm slower and more power-based Force users with Force-based leaps and speed moves. She used this form effectively to score a blow on Darth Vader. And since the Clone Wars, she's always used Jar-Kai or dual wielding along with the Ataru, making her an incredibly dangerous foe. But for whatever reason, Ahsoka decides to go with just one saber in two-handed configuration. The only time we ever see her do this is when she's either possessed by the sun or early on during her career. This is not a great sign. This is the equivalent of Tom Brady trying to be a mobile quarterback. Now, I've seen some people say that, oh, maybe she needs a two-handed grip to match Baylan Skoll's power here, but that makes no sense, as she already used Jar-Kai against Darth Vader, who is at least Baylan Skoll's equal in strength. It's possible that Ahsoka is getting old and so has less speed, but then again, all we have to do is take a look at Yoda, who is able to use the Force to make himself incredibly fast. Plus, trying to use strength against strength, especially strength that comes from a much bigger opponent, is really stupid. Also, because Ahsoka is a Jar-Kai practitioner, her primary is quite short and not really designed for two-handed usage. So there's only one real reason why Ahsoka has engaged in this battle in a completely unprepared and irrational way. It's because she's being emotional, just like her old self, just like her old master Anakin. And Baylan, on the other hand, has his guard mode on. He stands erect and stiff. This is a large man who lacks flexibility. He will wait for Ahsoka to come to him and keep himself as well defended as possible. He's regal like Vitiate, upright like a knight of the Round Table. Meanwhile, do you guys see this animalistic hunger in her eyes? Ahsoka's tapping into some kind of rage here. This is not Ahsoka in peace as we've seen her before when facing the Inquisitors, who she so easily bested. No, Ahsoka is tapping into the dark side and she's using power moves. She's using Form 5, just like Anakin, and it doesn't seem to be working. And that's because Ahsoka is weak in the dark side. What's even more incredible is that Baylan Skoll, despite looking like Vader, is using Form 3, a shell defense technique generally used by Jedi. And as I mentioned before, how you fight says a lot about who you are as a person, and I don't really think Baylan Skoll wants to kill Ahsoka here.
To kill her would be a shame. There are so few Jedi left.
I keep showing this clip because look at his face. That's remorse. I think he's being serious.
The only reason I'm here is to secure the future.
For you?
Something far greater.
Ambitious.
Necessary.
I too am a true believer of Thrawn, especially Thrawn in the canon novels. He was a very rational and relatively kind individual. And by kind, I don't mean like just small talk or patting you on the back every now and then. Thrawn took a lot of time to make sure that every one of his crew members were well taken care of, that they were trained, and if they did make mistakes, as long as they learned from those mistakes, he was cool with it. He wasn't some kind of evil mastermind. Of course, Thrawn towards the end, and by the end I mean in the Rebel series, does seem to head towards chaos and madness a bit more. Perhaps it's Sidious's influence. But there is a sliver of hope that Thrawn might still be able to redeem some of his honor and not just be a generic bad guy. Perhaps Baylan Skoll could join him, although that's much less of a possibility, I think. Now, let's not get too starry-eyed here. Baylan Skoll isn't some light-side, good-hearted individual. He might have some principles, but he's still a cold-blooded murderer. Remember what he did to that New Republic ship? Just because he's kept his cool and he's more strategic doesn't make him the good guy, and it doesn't make Ahsoka the bad girl either. And so, like many Form 3 practitioners, Baylan Skoll also has used Form 4 quite vigorously to keep Ahsoka off balance. Look at the power behind his strokes. But whenever he goes on defense, he falls back into Form 3 and he allows, But whenever he's on defense, he falls back to Form 3 and it allows Ahsoka to just flail in front of him and expend her energy. But then the two lock blades and Baylan Skoll finally tells Ahsoka what he thinks of her, and it's not great.
Your legacy, like your master's, was one of death and destruction.
Remember what Kanan said at the beginning of this video about how using a lightsaber is like channeling a funnel of force powers and emotions and energy. You're basically using the lightsaber as a conduit for how you feel inside. And so when these two blades lock together, there's an exchange of feelings and emotions. It's an intimate moment. And so Ahsoka answers Baylan's claim with more anger and a strong kick to the chest. Baylan has succeeded in making her angry. What she does next is even more surprisingly foolish for someone as clever as Ahsoka, who's always cautious and thoughtful in her approach to old age. But now I guess she's just snips once again. She rushes, and instead of using the Force to knock over the map, or instead of hitting it with her saber, she reaches into the magic field and tries to grab the map with her bare hands. The injury might not be great, but the pain is distracting, and it breaks Ahsoka's concentration from the Force, and it makes it even harder for her to defend herself against Baylan. Remember, Baylan only has one job, and up until this point, Ahsoka wasn't a huge threat because she never touched the map, but now that she has the map, things change. And for the first time, Baylan starts stringing together a series of fierce blows, even stronger and more aggressive than before. I really think that prior to this, Baylan Skoll was happy with just dueling Ahsoka for fun, for entertainment. Again, I don't think he really wanted to kill her.
It didn't need to come to this.
But now that the map is no longer in place, he lets loose. If what we saw before was a polite sparring session between two masters, now it's just pure rage. And now Ahsoka, who's been driven by anger, is completely out of position. She lacks the strength to carry on, and this is a fatal mistake. Interestingly enough, now that Ahsoka has reverted to her younger, more aggressive snip self, that's exactly what Anakin calls her when he sees her in the world in between worlds. What's even more interesting is that Darth Vader theme. Is it Anakin who's going dark, or is it Ahsoka who's heading towards the dark side? Now, the sequel trilogy had many duels, and from a choreography standpoint, they were visually extremely interesting and beautiful to look at. For instance, that duel in Snoke's throne room, it was epic. There were so many moving parts. But you can tell that Rian Johnson's understanding of the lore is skin deep. Now let's take a look at the duels that Filoni puts together on the other hand. While they aren't as well choreographed, although this one was pretty awesome. I mean, you have the jumping spin and the rock parkour move. That, by the way, is for all you homies who get bored because lightsaber combat isn't aggressive or acrobatic enough. I guess a lot of people like the prequel style. But anyway, the choreography isn't as epic. The moves not as demanding or cool, but the duel itself is much more like a chess match. There's actually layers and layers of meaning, subtle nods and hints to what's going on in the mind of the participant. And so whether it's the Vader versus Kenobi duel or this Baylan Skoll versus Ahsoka duel, I'm starting to really understand and respect Filoni's approach to these fights a lot more. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed our breakdown of this video. If you enjoyed this content, why not subscribe and hit that notification button down below. We're always pumping out really in-depth lore videos, and right now, of course, we are covering Ahsoka. Well guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.